Well, hello everyone and welcome to another episode here on the MIgardener channel. I know you all are going to love this one, and because it's a kind of a two-parter for this episode, so I wanted to show you all kind of an update on how the plants have been growing in basically a 3-week update. So I'm really excited for that because it's been 3 weeks since we started this bed and a lot has changed. The next thing that I wanted to talk about was these grow lights. Now, we have had so many questions about it. We did film an episode on it earlier, about 2 years ago, but I wanted to kind of bring everyone up to speed. I know there's a lot of new people joining us, so that's awesome as well. We're almost at the 100,000 mark, so definitely if you love this video, give it a thumbs up, share it with your friends. That always helps, and it really does help to spread the word and get this kind of content out to other people that would love to see it. So the Blue Lake bush beans have just done so well. These are just absolutely taking off. They're not laggy whatsoever. They're starting to bush and branch, and they're doing exceedingly well. I'm so pleased with these and how they've grown. They're putting on their first set of adult leaves now. And they're just doing wonderfully. Now, what I will say is that some are slower than others. I'm not totally sure why. Some are growing just a little bit slower, but I'm sure they'll catch up. You know, these ones right here, I mean, these are just rocking and rolling. What I don't want to happen is I basically want everything to be growing at a very same stage, because when you're growing indoors with kind of just direct overhead light, and it's not obviously the sun, what can happen is shading can happen very easily. See, you can see this right here where this plant right here is clearly dominating the scene, and this plant as well is kind of clearly dominating the scene, and in here you have this kind of little guy. What I don't want to happen is that, you know, this plant right here has this leaf, these 3 leaves, and same thing with this. You know, this plant is opening up another set of leaves. It's got 3 leaves here and 2 here, and every leaf increases the amount of energy the plant can produce, so it becomes exponential. And when you only have a plant with just 2 leaves, almost, you know, kind of almost a new set of adult leaves, what can happen is that these plants can kind of just get off to the races and then just, you know, shoot up and completely block these other plants before they get a chance to really get established. Now, with the yellow wax bean, it is a little bit of the same. We had some germination issues. We had a little bit of damping off, and we'll be talking about that in a later episode. But we had a couple dampened off. But you know, wonderful size leaves. I'm very pleased with how large these leaves are. Just every day, it's incredible. They almost seem like they grow by the day. And as you can see, we also have some carrots beginning to germinate. Now, these are not a large taproot carrot. These are Parisian carrots, so they just kind of get like almost like a radish, but it's just a small little carrot. And there's some there. The beets are doing wonderfully. I'm really pleased to see the beets beginning to pop up. There's some more down here that are just beginning to germinate. A little slow there, but there's some other ones that you know, we planted a little square of 4 there, and they're doing well. And then over here, the basil. The basil is germinating nicely. So we've got some basil starting to pop up, and some more over here, and they're doing nicely. And I'm sure they'll start growing up really quickly. Basil grows really slow at first, and once it gets started, it just takes off like crazy. And then the radishes. Radishes are doing awesome as well. I had a little issue with too much moisture, and so we had a little bit of root rot issues, but we're past that. Fixed it, and they're growing up nice and strong now. And even if we don't get any radishes, we'll have some radish greens to eat, so that's not a problem at all. Now, here is the bed of greens. This is our greens section here, and as you can see, a lot has changed. So one of the most notable is this section of lettuce here. Now, you'll see that the black-seeded Simpson has really kind of, it's not stunted, but it's really kind of taken a back seat to this lettuce right here. And this is the bronze guard lettuce. And this is just a wonderful leaf lettuce because it's such fast growing. Now, what I'm also concerned about is the same thing with the beans. I'm concerned that these, you know, because I had forgotten when I planted, you know, again, just in the heat of the moment, I had actually kind of screwed this up. So the bronze guard should have been next to romaine lettuce. So our romaine lettuce is doing exceedingly well here, and as you can see, I mean, this stuff's just really taken off nicely. And so this would be better planted next to the Bronze Guard. But the Bronze Guard I planted next to the kind of the slower germinating, slower growing black-seeded Simpson. Still a very favorite variety, very buttery, soft leaves. It's wonderful, wonderful to grow. It's just if you grow it next to something that grows, I guess, more aggressively, there's going to be issues here. They're gonna compete for water and water and nutrients and root space, and so this might have not been the best pairing here. Well, I'm going to be honest, it was not the best pairing. That's a mistake on my part again too. And you'll also notice kind of some spottiness throughout here. We reseeded, so there is some more seeds kind of popping up in here, but it's going to be filling out in the weeks to come. But we did have some germination issues, just kind of getting the moisture levels right in the beginning. And so everything is growing nicely now. Very pleased with it, and we should have in the next couple weeks some very uniform rows, because I reseeded here, where you can start to see kind of some germination issues kind of throughout these parts of the beds here. It just held on to water a little bit more than I would have preferred, and definitely resulted in some spotty germination. But all in all, wonderful. I mean, the oak leaf lettuce is just looking fantastic. And the thing that I love to see is that they're not leggy whatsoever. Oftentimes people, when they're growing indoors, they get very leggy plants. And one of the things that you can see with leggy plants is basically the stem will continue to grow, but it won't put on any extra leaves. What we like to look for, and how we can tell if our lights are calibrated right with height or output or anything like that, is just by seeing if the length of the plant is getting taller and it's not really putting on any more leaves, or if it's staying really nice and stout to the ground, really nice and kind of just low, and it's just kind of it's just, I don't know, it's got a very structural, sturdy base. That's, I guess, the best way you can put it. All right, so now that we have segued into the topic of lights, I wanted to talk about the grow lights that we're using and some questions that come up quite a bit. Now, people always ask me, obviously, what type of grow lights are we using? We are using an 8-bulb grow light, 4 feet long. The tubes are T8s, and they are Growlight specific bulbs. However, that also leads into the next question, which is, do I have to use Growlight bulbs to grow plants? And the answer is no. No, you do not. You do not have to have Growlight specific bulbs. What I will say is that you have to make sure that the compact fluorescents are appropriate for growing plants. You can't just go out and get any compact fluorescent. The first thing that dictates if it's an appropriate bulb for growing plants is that it is above a 25 watt. So you will often see like a 10 watt, a 5 watt, or maybe a 20 watt or whatever. You want to make sure that the wattage is above 25 watts, or that the output, it will have kind of a have a conversion. So if the compact fluorescent runs off of 20 watts or 25 watts, let's say, it might have the equivalent of a 100 watt light bulb. You want a incandescent equivalent of at least 100 watts, and that's going to be the bare minimum that you should be using to grow your plants. The next thing, and any less, you're going to have stress in the plants. Like we talked about, you're going to notice that the plants are going to get leggy. And that's solely for the fact that I'll actually talk a little bit more on that, because I can see some comments coming up, why can't you? The reason why you can't go any less is because the light itself is putting out light. There's light touching my hand. If my hand is a leaf, the reason why my hand is being illuminated is because there's light particles actually touching my hand. Now, the less wattage the bulb is, the less lumens are being put out, and that means less photons, light particles, are able to touch my hand. And so since the leaves only have one job, and that's to bring in light photons to convert to energy, you need more photons. And so you get photons from lumens, and these bulbs right here are about, this whole grow light setup is 20,000 lumens each, whereas something like a 20 watt compact fluorescent or at like a 15 watt compact fluorescent, or even 10 watt compact fluorescent, I'll go even lower. If you try to grow with a 10 watt compact fluorescent, those only have about 750 to 1,000 lumens. It's just not enough. It's just not going to cut it. And so if you have a 25 watt compact fluorescent, which I said is the minimum, you're going to have right around 2,500 to 3,000 lumens. That's plenty to get some good seedlings. But that brings in the next part, is the height of the light. So our lights are about 2 feet up. You try that with a 25 watt compact fluorescent, don't even bother. Because, again, it has to do with the light particles coming down. You want as little distance as possible between the top of the plant and the lights with respect to obviously the power of the light. So since these are 20,000 lumens, we can afford to keep them 2 feet above the plant, above the the top of the plants, because there's enough light particles coming down to grow the plants without having any stress. The closer the lights are, the less distance that light has to travel, meaning there's a higher chance that the light particles are going to be landing on the leaves and not the surrounding areas, or being dissipated into the air. Another question that comes up is, can I use shop lights? Absolutely. Do not get hung up on the fact that it's a shop light and not a grow light. The fact of the matter is that I used shop lights to grow my seedlings for 3 years, never had a problem. You just have to remember that it's important to keep those shop lights about 3 to 5 inches above the top of the plants, and you're going to have very good success. Now, another question, and the final question that I'm going to talk about is, actually I'll answer 2 more because these are both pretty common. Is there a difference between T8s, T5s, and T2s? There's really not a huge difference that I would worry about. If you're someone that's becoming a professional, professional gardener, or you're making it your profession, look into it and you can do your research. There's very minute differences between the lights, but what I can say is that for the average home gardener, do not get hung up on the T's. Just make sure that it's a compact fluorescent. Now, the very last question that I get asked all the time is, what's the Kelvin? What's the Kelvin all about? Kelvin is related to the color of the temperature. So you'll see that lower Kelvin numbers, like 2,500, 2,500, or 3,500, those are a kind of a more warm light. And that's because there's more red found in that light. It's cooler. And so if you come into like a daylight white, you're talking about something around the lines of like 6,500 Kelvin to 7,500 Kelvin. That is what needs to be the color of your light in order to properly grow your plants. And that's solely for the fact that plants that are going through a vegetative state or producing leaves, like our beans and our lettuce and stuff, seedlings in general, you're not looking at getting fruit production. Fruit production is brought on by lower temperature light, and so they're actually the lower end of the spectrum of light is going to help bring on fruit, but it's not going to help you out any with growing your plants. So you want more blue in your light, and so that's why you will want something in the 5,600 Kelvin and up. Don't go any less than 5,600 Kelvin. That is the bare minimum. 5,600 Kelvin to 7,500 Kelvin. These are 6,500 Kelvin lights. They're wonderful, wonderful lights, and believe it or not, they do make another notch up higher. So they can get even more intense, even more white, and they're obviously more expensive as well. But these are very accessible, and these are wonderful, wonderful grow lights. So that's all I have to talk about. Hopefully you all enjoyed. Hopefully you learned something new. If you have any questions or comments, though, feel free to pop them down in the comments box below. I'd be glad to answer them. And that's all I got. So as always, this is Luke from the MIgardener channel reminding you to grow big or go home, and we'll catch you later. See ya. Bye.